just going to catch up on what I've done so far. So I've made this little housing here on the top of the roof. This is pretty much going to be where the pump, quote unquote, pump out the water. Um, I mean, it's kind of square enough. To be honest though, it's a train layout, not a truck layout. So if you're looking at that and you realize it's not square, get back to look at the trains. But I need to make the covering for this part, and I decided I might as well teach you guys something that you probably already know, but it's just something called the score and snap method. There's more than a few people online who have done this before, and I'm definitely not the most qualified to teach it. But what I did is I made some basic measurements. Pretty much drew down a piece of styrene, took an X-Acto knife, to kind of gently trace along those lines like that. Don't cut all the way through. Then do the other one. Hopefully I'm getting a good angle of this, but you know, it's a pretty simple technique and you'll get pretty straight and clean lines every time. Then just snap it like that. A little bending. There. Perfect little square. Hopefully if I measure right. Yeah. Say it's close enough. Good enough for government work. And we'll just glue that on. Call it a day. Now for this project, I was just using a basic brush. Really, I just want to get a base coat of green down. You definitely could use an airbrush for this, but I feel much more comfortable with a brush. Plus, the results are about as good as what I get with an airbrush. My only thing is you have to do maybe one or even two coats of this. Airbrush, maybe you'd only do one. But this was pretty simple, and I pretty much covered the whole thing in one base coat of green, just directly out of a bottle. Now, I actually was very careful around one of the doors of the truck with this. I actually left that mostly blank, and because I wanted to paint that white to make it look like a replacement door. That's my favorite part when painting with a brush, is the amount of control you have with it versus an airbrush where I just spray everything all at once. Granted, it's slower, but it's, you get very good results anyway. At this point, I lost around 75% of my footage. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna, yeah. That was dumb on my part, but pretty much all I did was paint everything with a base coat of green. Really everything's mostly painted by the next shot. No, I also didn't paint the windows or the front grille. Those would be painted different colors. And, oh, yeah, here, it's already painted up. Did the same thing to the back. Painted some parts black, some parts not. Now for this next part, I decided to get a little experimental here, like I did with the suspension on the rear. When rust forms on cars, it bubbles and bulges out the metal. There's a lot of, it's just the oxidation, and I'll show a couple pictures. Pretty much, I wanted to try and recreate this best I could, and my best idea I had was with some paper towels, which I kind of rolled up and crushed and tore off into very, very tiny pieces. Even in HO scale, very small pieces. I kind of just ended up gluing on there, and used a little bit of water to soften it after it was on there, to glue it and shape it and mold it a little bit like paper mache. Very basic technique. So here you can kind of just see I'm using basic super glue. My technique, I don't know, I've never done this before. Just try it out. A little blob of super glue, preferably the gel. I think it might work a little better. If you do the liquid stuff, it's gonna flow everywhere and just dry too fast. And then I just kind of grabbed a little piece of paper and stuck it on there. It's tissue paper, or I literally used a random paper towel that was covered in paint already. So use whatever, just paper. I kind of squeezed it on there. Then I actually would dip my tweezers in water in a little bowl off camera. then kind of soften it and move it around until the glue dried and it was just solid and I couldn't get it off anymore. Here I pretty much started the weathering early. This is a bit of Tamiya paint and just a different shade of green. More or less, my thinking is the housing on top of the tanker is not original, and the guys at the shop obviously were not going to go buy a new color matched pail of green paint to match the original color of the truck because, you know, that's a lot of money, and the truck was already probably 25 years old when they got it, and they just had to do a whole rebuild on it. So they're not repainting this. So pretty much just kind of going at it, painting there and doing some touch-ups around the truck where I think there might have been touch-ups that realistically they will have done. Corners where I added those rust damage areas, you know, stuff like that. For this next part, I decided to try out an effect that is pretty common, especially in older cars where the paint starts to go bad. Again, I'll show photos. It's something called sunburning, just like you might get a sunburn. The paint on the car gets a sunburn over time. It really only happens on old paint. Really just, pretty much my technique for this was just taking white paint that's already thinned out, blot it over, then hit it with a very wet, clean brush. Doesn't have to be particularly clean, just, you know, thin it out. Because pretty much what that does is it leaves a white line around this quote-unquote sunburned area. And when you look at these cars, they just get like a weird like whitish blob shape on their roof, hood, just anywhere exposed to the sun all the time. And considering this is a quarry truck in the basin of a quarry 24/7, this is going to have probably a good amount of sunburning. Granted, this only happens with older paint and in kind of specific conditions, but you know, this is kind of an experiment for me, so I just want to see if I can make it work. And I'm pleased to say, I think this did turn out good. I did have to do quite a bit of work with it. In addition to doing this, I did kind of try and make rust spots, because when the sunburning effect is pretty much when the paint literally gets burned through by UV light, so rust starts to crop up underneath of it. I also did afterwards dry brush it with green after it was dry. Just very, very the same body color. It kind of made the lines stand out like a little less because they were a little too pronounced. I really, I'm gonna be honest with you, I just kind of played with it for a long time, going back and forth until I was like, you know, that's good enough. Until I pretty much got tired of working on it. So I think that's the best way of weather. Just keep going back and forth until you're tired of doing it and you think it looks good enough. Because generally at that point, no one else will notice even. So yeah, I think this turned out good enough. Also did the same thing on the hood, but you know, I would have shown that to you if I didn't lose the footage. You know, that's fine though. So, sorry to have lied to you, but I guess I didn't lose the footage. I'm not going back and changing that. Same thing on the hood. I am going to point out though, I painted the front grille white and the windows black. Along with the logo on the side there is red. That's all I've done. However, a lot of you would paint that front grille chrome because a lot of them were painted chrome. However, not all of them were. In fact, more of them were not chrome. On cheaper work trucks, they didn't want to spend the money on chrome. So what you do is you just paint it white to look like chrome. Both, actually, funnily enough, cars in the US and Russia did this in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So you actually see trucks with white grills. It's not fooling anyone, but you know, looks better than no chrome. So, but there are even some who went cheaper still and just color matched it. So really, I could have been extra lazy, but you know, I think it looks better that way. Plus, when that big chunky front bumper's on there, I think it's gonna need it. Just a little breaking color. And also, I'm gonna point out, I painted the door white. I made it purposely patchy. Now, I could be lying right now, but I want to make it look like there's gray primer under there. So you're just gonna have to believe me on this one. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good though. A very cheap workman's truck, if you know what I mean. So here are those rust patches I was talking about. Pretty much all I did is I kind of put them on with, again, thinned out brown paint, and then I blend them away. I'm gonna be honest, right now I actually really like how the hood looks, and I blended it away too much. So I kind of kept going back and forth trying to get that same color back, and I couldn't, but same thing on the rear. I think I went a little too dark and then blended too much away. It's one of those things as a delicate balance, and you'll figure it out soon enough. I kind of gave up after a while. I got tired of it and called it good enough. So I think it looks good enough though. So that's enough for me. So the next effect I wanted to try was a little bit of streaking from the door handle because I wanted to look like this was a replacement door handle, probably gotten from a junkyard. I'm hilariously bad at this. I was very lucky with this one streak here. It's just a technique that practice over and over again, and I would use a smaller brush next time. But pretty much what I did is I put a little brown on there. Pretty much the best advice I can give is dot a little bit on there, then take a very small brush, kind of like dip the tip of it into that little puddle you made from where you want the streak to start and just drag it down as fast as you can. That's best advice I can give. I'm no expert at it, and I'm pretty terrible at it, so hope that helps. For this next bit, I'm pretty sure gonna fast forward through it. I'm just adding little rust patches using like saddle brown or whatever it is. Nothing fancy, kind of thinning it out before using it. And by the way, I never mentioned this for thinner. I just use water, and these are acrylic paints, so you know, fast working time. I'll give it that, but that's my only issue with them. Yeah, not much to say here. So for this next part, for the front grill at least, I pretty much make my own pan liner out of black acrylic paint, a little bit of water. I don't thin out enough as I should have here, but it's good enough. And I do touch up the white grill with white again. You know, pretty straightforward stuff. Just make it, give it a little bit of depth. Around the hood and the doors, I do, as well as the actual the utility body on the back and the tanker and really everywhere else, I do thin out the black a lot and kind of make my own panel liner. You know, I could buy the Tamiya stuff, but I'm really cheap. So I'm not doing that anytime soon. But, you know, maybe if the YouTube money starts rolling in, I'll buy some. But, you know, for now, I'm just going to use this, and it's good enough, and I've used on every other project up until now. Okay, for this next part, pretty much all I show is me making the indicator lights and picking them out with enamel paint. I really like testers, and use a crappy brush for this that you don't care about. The one I used, pretty much had glue all over it. So I'm going to run you through exactly what you guys missed because I lost a lot of footage. I picked out a lot of things in Chrome, like the windshield wipers, the seal around the windows, that red emblem, you can just see on the hood there. Um, and really that's about it. I mean, mainly like the door handles, I guess, and the rear indicators. That's really it. Just basic things you'd always find in Chrome in these old cars. Oh yeah, in addition to this, I also use canopy glue in the windows anywhere it's glass. It makes it look shiny. Best answer I can really give you. It makes it look like glass. Um, Not much more to say about that. Oh yeah, and I'll show you the wheels in a bit too. Don't go crazy with them. I painted the wheel rims white, except for one, the front, which I painted black to make it look like a replacement or spare. Nothing crazy. Don't worry about it. Um, yeah, but my tip for the canopy glue, it's kind of it almost use the surface tension of it against it almost. You pretty much have to like connect the dots, connect it to all the edges of the window, and it'll pretty much fill itself in. And it won't actually, unless you accidentally move your hand, it will try and stay inside the lines more or less for you. So you definitely can paint it on, but again, use a crappy brush for this. This is actually the same brush you just used for the enamel, but I washed it, pretty much all the enamel paint out. I have a bucket of brushes marked crappy ones because these ones get used for painting with this canopy glue or enamel. All right, so here's pretty much the final look at it before I go ahead and paint it. I have done some extra rust detailing, especially around the wheel wells where that heavy texture I added was. Really, I just used some basic saddle brown. Use any brown really. It's kind of a brighter color. Kind of just dry brushed it on there. However, I will show you one step here. This step, you can see there's actually a defect in the casting. There's a slight line there. It looks like it's been cracked or something like that. I'm going to try and make it look like the step is very old and falling off because I don't know if you've seen any old trucks, but they lose these steps pretty frequently just due to the rust. Otherwise, pretty much everything is done, and I'll get back to you soon. Pretty much after clear coating, it went well. However, I with my fat fingers, I kind of dipped my hand in the paint and it kind of came off in some spots. Pretty much my best fix for this was kind of dry brushing some green on. I really didn't even clear coat it afterwards, but you know, it's good enough. When I came to the final assembly, just a lot of super glue. That's all I can say. That seems what works best on this plastic. And another thing that I don't believe I showed is I'll actually have to reapply the canopy glue again to the windows to make it look shiny again because the matte clear coat made it look dull. So I would redo that again. Otherwise, the final assembly is pretty straightforward. So when I glued the two halves together, I was worried about them snapping apart, so I used quick drying JB Weld. I think you could make this work and it would work pretty well. I messed it up though. The whole frame was like tweaked and it looked off, and I didn't show that. But pretty much I just ended up breaking it in half, which was surprisingly easy, and just went to straight super glue. That seemed to do the trick. I considered adding some indicator pins, but I was kind of on time crunch because I was about to go on a trip. So kind of just glued it together and hope for the best. And it looks pretty good. So pretty much the last detail I added was the drive shaft, and then I called it done after slathering some black paint on it, and I pretty much called it a day. Drive shaft was a simple wooden dowel, and it really was a little bit of carving. That's all it was. After that, I called the project done.